Well, welcome to the June 10th meeting of the Community Preservation Committee. We're all reporting in from our bunkers for COVID-19, but here to do the work of the town on important projects and activities. I'm John Hall, the current chair, for at least a few more minutes. And perhaps we could take a moment to introduce everybody else who's on the call. I'll start with Pat, who is next on my screen.
Yep, so I'm here. Just similar to any remote meeting we do, we just want to kind of go through a brief overview of what we need to do legally. That starts with a committee roll call, such as what we're doing. Addressing formats such as speak with clarity, state your name. Public participation, if there is any, state your name, address as well, and refrain from speaking over anyone. And I just want to also put us at the next slide for if anyone is at home calling in, questions, concerns, anything like that can be addressed to cpa@norwoodma.gov. The meeting link is shown on the slide, but you can also access that on the town's website in the calendar section. It'll have for CPA meeting today, June 10th, we should have the go-to meeting information there as well. So I just want to display that information. All right.
Thank you, Pat. Let's just continue the introductions by a bit more time in case our last member is able to attend. John Aprea, have you next?
Yep, John Aprea, member at large.
And next is our Norwood Community Media person who's just identified as N. Patty Starr is next.
Patty Starr, Norwood Housing Authority.
Joe Greeley, you're next.
Joe Greeley, at large member. Thanks for having me.
Cheryl Rogers.
No, it's actually Cheryl Doyle, but I'll forgive you. Conservation Commission. I don't know why they keep having that say Rogers.
Okay, half the time when I come on, it lists me as my wife, so, our one guest is Matt Lane, newly elected member of the Board of Selectmen. Matt, you say hi.
Hi, this is Matt Lane, Board of Selectmen. I think that's the first time I've said that out loud in the meeting, so congratulations. And I will, there's a great group, and I'm just going to hang out in the background, so thank you for having me.
Thank you, Matt. Tony Esco.
Representing the Historical Commission.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I couldn't hear you very clearly.
All right. Can you hear me?
This conference will now be recorded.
Tony Esco, the Historical Commission. I'll check my mic volume, but it's on.
Yeah, I think that's cured it. Next up is Peter McFarland.
Hi, Peter McFarland, Vice Chair, member at large.
And lastly, Joe Sheehan.
Thank you. From the Norwood Planning Board.
Joe is due to this committee, succeeding the original member from the Planning Committee, Debbie Homewood. So next on the agenda, as I believe the approval of minutes from the last two meetings. I got them from Pat, so I'll invite a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay.
Second.
Any discussion? Anybody see anything missing or in need of change? Not seeing any hands go up. So although we have to do roll call votes on everything. So
Are we going to do one for each month, or are we doing one for cover both?
I thought your motion was for both.
Yeah.
And I think that's okay. It's just that we can't just all raise our hand while we're remote. That's part of the rules. So going in order, John Aprea.
Yeah, aye.
Okay. Patty Starr. Yea or
Aye.
nay?
Patty Starr, aye.
Okay, Joe Greeley,
Joe Greeley, aye.
Carol Doyle,
Aye.
Tony Esco,
Aye.
Peter McFarland,
Aye.
Joe Sheehan,
Aye.
and I vote aye. So unanimous, 8-0, with one person not present. The next thing on the agenda is the reorganization of this committee. This is about the time of year when we name our new officers. We operate on the town's fiscal year. So whoever is selected for various officer positions might take over tonight or might take over at our first meeting in July. Just a little background for those who are new. At the very outset, we operated under the assumption that officers would be at-large members. We had 4 at-large members. Original at-large member Bob Thornton was an immediate choice as treasurer, and when he elected to leave, John Aprea, his replacement, came on with all the skills and has been treasurer ever since. Joe Greeley was our first chair. I was the first vice chair. At the first switch, I became chair. Peter McFarland became vice chair. So if we followed rotational precedent, Peter would become chair and Joe would come in as vice chair, assuming John is willing to volunteer for another year's heavy lifting on the financial side. But this is all past. We're not bound to all this. Cheryl.
I just have a question on the statement that you said that we agreed that only the members at large would hold an office. I don't ever remember that being an agreement.
It may not have been an agreement. It was a suggestion that some people made, and you're right to correct my characterization.
Well, then you're leaving out you're leaving 4 members out of here constantly then? Well, technically 5, because then there's a selectman representative. And then it would only be 4 people always doing the chair, vice chair, and the treasurer. I don't have a problem like nominating Peter since he's vice chair and that, but I don't think it should just be restricted to 4 people when it's a 9-member board.
As far as I know, our rules don't require us to follow any restrictions. I put that out there only as background past practice. But I would like to invite nominations for the chair position. Patty?
Patty Starr, I would like to nominate Peter McFarland as chair, please.
Any
I would
second?
second.
Second.
Okay. Any other nominations for chair? Okay, seeing none, we'll conduct a vote to see if Peter's approved for the position. Again, going through in order on my screen, John Aprea,
John Aprea, aye.
Patty Starr,
Patty Starr, aye.
Joe Greeley,
Joe Greeley, aye.
Carol Doyle,
Aye.
Tony Esco,
Aye.
Peter McFarland,
Aye.
Joe Sheehan,
Aye.
and I vote aye. So Peter has been elected our next chair.
Thank you, Peter.
And I will now entertain nominations for the position of vice chair. Peter,
I'd not like to nominate Cheryl Doyle.
Carol Doyle, a second for that?
I'll second that.
Okay. Any other nominations? Okay, seeing none, we'll go through the vote and see if we have approval for Cheryl. I'm assuming, Cheryl, I should ask, are you willing to serve if elected?
I will. Thank you, Peter.
Okay. So John Aprea,
John Aprea, aye.
Patty Starr,
Patty Starr, aye.
Joe Greeley,
Joe Greeley, aye.
Carol Doyle,
Aye.
Tony Esco,
Aye.
Peter McFarland,
Aye.
Joe Sheehan,
Aye.
and I vote aye. So we have a unanimous selections for all three offices. Now, the question for the rest of our meeting is, does the new team want to take over right away? Or do you want to wait till the next meeting? I see Peter shaking his head. Does that mean you
I'd say
don't?
July I prefer July.
Okay. Then we'll proceed in the same manner as up to now. Cheryl, did you have a comment?
Are we doing the treasurer next? Just to make it formal?
Ah, good point. I was so pleased that John said yes. I didn't want to give him a chance.
Don't ruffle anything.
It's only for the vote part of it?
Yeah, no, your
Okay.
point is well taken. I will now accept nominations for treasurer.
Nominate John Apria.
Okay, second,
Second.
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 Any other nominations? Seeing none, we'll go through the group. John Aprea,
Thank you very much. Aye.
Patty Starr,
Patty Starr, aye.
Joe Greeley,
Joe Greeley, aye.
Patty Doyle, or Cheryl Doyle. I'm gonna find every way to mess up your name.
Aye.
Inventing people now.
Do I need a name tag?
It may come to that. Tony Esco,
Aye.
Peter McFarland,
Aye.
Joe Sheehan,
Aye.
and I vote aye. So now we have properly conferred the blessings of election upon our three new officers. Congratulations to all our winners and look forward to great things. I see our host has put something up on the revised timeline. This is the next item on the agenda is a proposal for our timeline through the end of this year. Pat, you want to walk us through what we're seeing here?
Yep. So obviously everything going on in the world right now, it's kind of up in the air, but just to kind of put us on track and give us a draft timeline for the rest of 2020. The dates that you see in black, those are following our regular meeting schedule of every other Wednesday. The dates in red have more to do with our application schedule. You'll notice the open application period and the closing date are the same times as the previous 2 years. The pre-application period, that was something I threw in, and we can discuss it. We'll be discussing that later in the meeting in terms of pre-application requirements with getting signatures and approval before a potential applicant submits a project. The dates in gray, I just have as placeholder meetings. If for whatever reason, if we needed to have an additional meeting, potentially, if we're getting ready for the fall special town meeting, and we are able to bring our projects back up, the projects that we had going up until everything was pushed back and delayed due to the coronavirus pandemic. So those dates are in there just in case if we need to have another public hearing, if we need to meet again with the project applicants from this previous year. So that's about it.
Let me add a couple points particularly for those who are new to our committee or are watching at home. We had a nice rhythm going where we had an annual cycle that kicked off in the late spring with the update of the needs assessment, which is required under the law, and then a series of steps running through town meeting where we would have the approval of projects that we had spent the previous year selecting and vetting, plus our taking in of the revenue we received, putting that into the proper bins based on the established rules, putting a specific budget in for administrative amounts and so forth. And it would all be a neat sequential process. Now comes COVID-19. It's had several effects. One is that it's pushed back the town meeting, which is critical in the process, by a couple of months. Second is that it interrupted our process for finalizing the selection of applications from last year, which is now scheduled to be wrapped up at the special town meeting in the fall. Third, we got a lot of useful feedback from a couple parties, including the town manager and the purchasing director, that they would like to have a chance to provide comments on proposals before they get well into our process. And that's intended to be addressed by this pre-application process that Pat has alluded to here in red. The main effect for the schedule is it pushes up the start time for the next cycle from what it had been. So we now are in a period where a lot of things that should have been over or should have been coming up are all happening at the same time. And we're trying to do that in a way that will be effective and bearable. The only thing I see that's not on the list that I realize should be is this revision of the needs assessment. And if we end up with a pre-application process that's opened on August 1st, we pretty much have to take care of the needs assessment this month and next month. Pat, comments?
I was just going to say, last year we really didn't have to change the needs assessment that much. I really don't see it being changed at all this year, unless I'm mistaken. So I don't know if we need to utilize an additional meeting for that, or if we could try to factor that in for an already planned meeting.
What's the group's thinking on that? Joe?
Mike, excuse me, my only question is, it sounds like we're moving forward with this pre-application process. So.
Not necessarily. It's a separate decision.
Okay, so let's say upon further review, if we do go through with this process, I would assume that would require at least an additional comment or page or process outline as far as what the expectation is for that.
The manner in which the pre-application process is scheduled and is designed to result in outcomes is later on the agenda. I think for right now, I'm trying to figure out whether we can handle the needs assessment in an accelerated way. And I see Peter's hand is up. Please speak.
As far as it goes, the needs assessment and the application process are two separate processes. So I don't think, I agree with Patrick. I don't think we might want to give it a quick review to make sure, I don't know if there's any dates or anything like that need to be done, or if there's anything that's been added as far as addendums go. I mean, and letters from any of the boards, historical commission, like that, unless they have something that they want to include in the needs assessment as an appendix. I think we're pretty well there, and probably should just give it a one less look in July or August and let it go at that. I don't think we need to tear it, really study it or do much to it. Just make sure we've got the most up-to-date information. The only thing that might affect that is the open space recreation plan just got approved, and that's been something new. So that might be an appendix that we need to add, because the one we have, I think, is from the 2 version, or it's 10 years old now. That's the only thing I can see that needs to be added to the needs assessment.
Okay, I don't want to monopolize response to your comments. See, we made reference to the Historical Commission, which has been one of the participating groups that has provided additional material during review and revision cycles. Tony, do you have any thoughts on whether your group is going to want to take another crack at it?
Well, right now, the only need that we're really working on is the Morse House. And in terms of any other application, there's none that I know of presently. So I'm not prepared to mention anything else in terms of extra needs at this time.
Okay. Suppose we do the following. We could ask our staff support, Pat, to look at the needs assessment and just identify if there are any things like dates that need to be updated, and then bring in something that has only that and have it be voted on by us in July. The second version of this is send out the routine request to the 5 supporting committees and say, you have anything that you really want to see added as an appendix to the needs assessment, we would entertain that, and now is the time to provide it. Give them a short period of time without seeming rude. And any thoughts on whether either or of those approaches would be a good approach? Patty, I see you signaling.
It's, as they said before, as Peter said rather, that I think the way we did before, I think if folks have something that they want to submit as far as the needs assessment go, that they would contact us. So for example, like housing does not have anything right now, but if we did, I think that we would contact CPC and make our needs known.
Okay, possible. Well, just to put a bow on this, suppose we ask Patrick to make the review I just described. It should be very, very quick, I would think, Patrick, and then bring in a slightly modified, updated draft needs assessment for a formal, distributed in advance of our next meeting and vote on it at our next meeting. Does that seem reasonable?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So realizing that a lot of the rest of the timeline depends on whether we decide to go with any pre-application process, and if so, whether we want the one that has the time commitments that we're talking about here. Does anyone have anything else that they see that they'd like to see done to this schedule? Or can we take it as a reasonable draft of where we are right now? Peter?
I think we had too long of a timeline. For instance, I looked at Canton's. Canton breaks their process up into 2 pieces. Pre-application process, which starts roughly September 1st and goes to the beginning of October. So you have 30 days. And then from October to November 15th, they have their application. So the final application has to be in by November 15th. So I don't think we need to go extended as far as we have. I think my feeling is we should have this process all wrapped up before we meet in November. So it'd be like the first Friday before the second Wednesday, which would be like November 6th this year. And then we have 30 days to, if it has to be, the final application should get reviewed if we have to send it to Kathy Carney and all that. I mean, this process, it's hard to, I think, for everybody to review something that isn't complete. And I think we have complete documents in order to have other, something like Kathy Carney review it. And then she would have 30 days to review it and get back to us by the beginning, our meeting in December. So I think that's kind of where I'd like to see it go. they have a pre-application, Canton has a pre-application, a pre-application application. I'm confused here. And it talks about, is the project allowable? And then it gives it a brief description, which is some of our ready. So it kind of breaks the application into two portions. And I don't know what their final application looks like. It's probably the first part plus something else. I don't know. I didn't get a chance to get the whole application up off their website. I think we don't need to really expand it as much as we're doing it. I think we can keep it to, roughly less than 3 months as far as pre-application and application process, and then we can start reviewing. And it doesn't really affect us too much on our end as far as that goes. We still have our line to go into annual town meeting and the whole process there.
Okay, I'm not surprised to hear you as the champion of the streamlined approach. Let me lay out the rationale for something more elaborate. During the past year, we had a briefing from Kathy Carney in which she indicated pretty clearly that she thought most of the applications we get underestimate what it will cost under current procurement rules to get the work done. And she would like a chance to weigh in on that and improve proposals before they get into our process. But she also was indicating that she has a lot of things to do and that review might take a while. The second source was Tony Mizuko, who indicated that he would like a chance early on to weigh in on whether a particular proposal is in line with or not in line with directions that he sees the town going in general. And he had that Morse House project, I think, as his example. So what Pat and I have been bouncing back and forth for the last few months is, okay, how do we set up a process that allows them to get involved? But then the reason it got even more complicated from my side was I figured this isn't a one-time step. Kathy may come in with her comments, but the proposers may feel that they don't want to accept all of that. Tony Mizuko may come in with his comments, and the proposers may feel they don't want to accept all of that. On the other hand, if we are having sign-offs, which both of the possible forms had, then we don't want them to be in a position where the proposers are giving the commenters too little time to come back and sign. But we don't want a situation where people who've been asked for comment treat the sign-off procedure as a pocket veto. Pat, I can see you're dying to jump in here. Please do.
So right now we're just looking at the timeline for the rest of the year. I think when we get into the pre-application discussion, which is the last item on the agenda, we could have more of this conversation. There's a few more items to go though before we get there. So I think we're just looking at our meeting schedule right now going forward. If we want to hold off and not approve anything project related until a later date, I think that could be fine as well.
Cheryl.
I think this revised timeline came before the cart came before the horse. I think we should discuss the changes that behind the scene is being done, because it seems like there's all these other extra steps that are added, and it might scare applicants away. I understand Kathy Carney's worried about there not being enough money, but we could ask her what would be the percentage that it should be, and then make sure applicants approve of it. But it's almost like, this is my opinion and my opinion only. I feel like this board, the control of this board on these applications to get them to town meeting is being taken away, and other people are controlling what should be going to town meeting. And I always thought the understanding, and if you check other towns, town meeting's the one who votes what's going to get approved and what the money's going to be spent on, because the tax-paying money goes into this fund. And it's basically been stripped by adding all these extra steps. It's also more complicated. And I believe you guys are going to be scaring a lot of people off that they're not going to submit the applications. It'll be too complicated. There's too many hoops to jump through. CPC is supposed to be, this board gets all the applications. They review it. They make sure that everybody gets what they're supposed to have in the packet. And then we figure out what's going, if it meets the criteria, then that goes to town meeting. Town meeting has the authority to vote on it. The way it is right now, some of these projects are going to get killed and not even make it to town. That's bad representation. My opinion, I think it's bad representation. This is supposed to be an independent board. It's not supposed to be lumped group into everything else that comes under the government of the town. That's why you have so many boards represented, and then you have the members at large represented. We might not even see some of these applications the way it's going to be reformatted. We might not see them, and we might think that they're worthy enough to go to town meeting. It's almost like we're reinventing the wheel. And I don't think we should reinvent it. I think we should stay going at the clip we're going. We have all these extra steps that.
Okay, I think your point is clear. Joe Greeley, I see you signaling.
Just in an effort to kind of move on with the agenda, can I make a recommendation that we table the discussion of the revised timeline until we're until the end of the agenda tonight?
Second.
Okay, all those in, well, we got to go by one. Freya,
John Aprea, aye.
Patty Starr,
Patty Starr, aye.
Joe Greeley,
Joe Greeley, aye.
Harold Doyle,
Cheryl Doyle, aye.
Tony Esco,
Aye.
Peter McFarland,
Aye.
Joe Sheehan, and I'm aye. So we're tabling till the end. So now we do something that's perhaps a little more straightforward without as many philosophical issues, which are preparation for fall special town meeting. Maybe that's bringing back anticipated project applicants. That's really scheduled too, so we'll table that. And we talk about discussion and approval of administrative budget. And I see Pat has a slide, or he had a slide up for a moment. Pat, do you want to walk us through that, or would you like John to?
Yeah. So I can go through it really quick, and then I'll hand off to John Aprea or Joe Greeley if they want to comment on the admin budget specifically. For right now, though, I just want to go to the. Let's see if I can find it. All right, can you see all see this right now? All right, just moving that around. So this is our projected, I guess what you would call it, our standard articles of appropriating not appropriating, but basically placing the money into the use accounts for the next fiscal year. As you can see, the projected balance right there represents article, I guess, that article of separating the funds into into the use accounts. So these are the revised figures. We were kind of surprised the match went down. I think from the last time we all talked, I think it was around 23% from the state, and I think it went down to almost 13% or even under that. So that impacted the numbers a little bit. From there, though, if you're just talking about the admin budget, you'll see that we're projecting at 5% of of what the expected local match is around 39,320. I just want to kind of hand this off. I know Joe Greeley put this together, and this is kind of a breakdown of what our both our past admin budgets and our proposed admin budget is. So Joe, I don't know if you want to kind of walk through this.
Joe has apparently fled the room.
I don't see him. All right. John Apria?
John?
Hi, yeah. I just wanted to thank Pat and Joe for putting this together. With the whole COVID thing and work and family, I've just been totally swamped and haven't been able to get in the weeds on these sort of things like normal, and I apologize. But Joe, thank you very much for putting this together. It looks very thorough as usual. I appreciate it. If you want to, if you want to take us through it.
Yeah, sure. Thank you both. Basically, this would, let's see, all of you town meeting members, if you haven't already seen your FY21 book, you will get it in the next couple of days. The budget book. This is article, what, 1, 2, this is just trying to see what administrative. So this, yep. So this represents the detail behind Article 8 at the June 22nd town meeting. This you can see in the middle of the page. Hopefully you can see the May 15th. These were the values as of May 15th. We had to go through a couple of iterations. The town treasurer came back and updated the estimate for CPA receipts. So this represents 5% of that updated $786,000 receipt. What I tried to do, consistent, just as a way to jumpstart. I'm sorry if it seemed like I was stepping on toes, but just as a way to jumpstart the discussion, we do have further on the agenda the first line item, the salary for administrative support. So we will get to that. Outside professional this past year, or this current fiscal year, I guess it is last year actually, we paid for title and legal support for the Saint Street project, which we have now officially acquired the property. But that outside professional would represent surveying, land, legal, etc. We did incur some expenses on the communication side and dues. The dues line represents our participation with the coalition, and the all too vague other category totals $10,000. So the combination of those it's just a rough estimate, but this I would recommend that we would fine tune this as needed, but present this in support of that Article 8 at town meeting. The numbers across the bottom tied to the new anticipated receipts. I do notice in this, again, this book, in the book, Pat had the previous slide, the estimate from the treasurer's office. That's what drove, that page right there. That's what drove the 5%, the $39,000 figure. But whoever is taking the microphone at those articles, the CPA articles, I think you'll definitely have to introduce folks to the fact that the page, you can see on the bottom, maybe at the bottom it says exhibit section 4.13, but the 4.1, but this is a revision. So the 4.13 that's actually in the book that people will be looking at is actually that original. I stand corrected. It is that same page. Never mind. So that 5% budget is just an allocation according to the treasurer's estimate.
All right. So Joe had mentioned also on the agenda was a recording secretary, and that was a topic we brought up. I feel like the past 3 or 4 meetings, and it was always the last thing under committee business that we kept on pushing back. So I don't know if that's something we want to look or you guys want to look into discussing now or voting on. I believe it. I don't have. Sorry, I don't have a job description for this one. I think I provided it for a previous meeting. Most boards and committees have a recording secretary, and so that takes one thing away from me, and kind of opens me up to be involved in the discussion more. And it's just a part-time position, or a few. I mean, it would just be there for the hours that meetings occur monthly. So I don't know if anyone wants to discuss that.
Patty?
We have been talking about this at every single meeting, I think, since I've been here. And I think that it's probably time to just move forward and place an ad and try to hire someone. I think we can use Pat's expertise. As he said, he's trying to take minutes and he's juggling too many balls. And I think we need to get somebody else in here so we can free him up.
Peter?
I make a motion for Patrick to submit a requisition to the HR department to hire start the employment process for a planning, what are we going to call it? EC administrative person. I don't know what the official title would be, but some title to that extent.
The
So
recording secretary.
Start the HR process.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, discussion on the motion. Pat, could I get a clarification? At some earlier versions of this, there was some suggestion that we'd be sharing the person with the planning department. Is that still the plan?
We could interview her for this. I don't think we ever said anything and put anything into stone, but I would think we would have to advertise it, as a position eligible to anybody as we would any position. So I can mention it to her if she's interested and wants to pick up another part-time gig. But I think we would have to go through and advertise it as we would anything else.
Okay. Any other points of discussion, Joe? Really?
I do think it's definitely, I'll use the word beneficial, but I'll circle back to that. I think it's definitely beneficial that we try to get somebody who is already familiar with the process. And if it's a person who's already in the building for another reason, I think that's a good idea. We don't want to have to recreate the wheel with this. I definitely think it's good if we would obviously need to make it clear what the responsibilities are for this, support a town meeting maybe, or whatever, but as long as we have a good definition of the responsibilities. The only caution is that if we combine our support of our committee with support of another committee, we do approach the magic number at which someone becomes a benefit eligible employee. So we do want to avoid that if possible, because there are other implications like pension and benefits and everything else that we would then have to build into our budget. And I'm not sure if that's the way we want to go. Other than that, I'm definitely in favor of this.
Cheryl?
I agree with what Joe said, that we have to be careful with the amount of hours and that because of the benefits. So getting somebody in here just as a recording secretary to allow Patrick to be able to participate with us, where he's not having to take the notes and writing down who's doing the motions, A recording secretary is fine. And it'd be a standalone person that then we don't have to do benefits or anything like that. They just record, take notes, and then do up the minutes and then submit them to Patrick to submit to us.
I guess my concern about sharing somebody with another group is different from Joe's, although I agree with Joe's point. I worry that we become vulnerable to a more powerful group having its needs serviced first and find ourselves without support on the schedules that are our schedules. And I don't know that's not a reason why I'm going to vote against the motion, but it is a concern I have if we go down a particular path. No,
Are these meetings always on a Wednesday?
they have been.
Then we probably would not, if we always do it the same day, we probably should not have any problem running into interfering with another group. As long as they don't also meet on a Wednesday.
Good point. Daryl?
I think the concern is that because we need our minutes typed up and submitted in a timely manner and we need our own support, I actually have to agree with Joe and John that we should keep it neutral and not share, because this is supposed to be, by state regulations and everything, a standalone board.
Any other comments before we vote? Seeing none, go through the list. John Afrea,
John Priya, aye.
Patty Starr,
Patty Starr, aye.
Joe Greeley,
Joe Greeley, aye.
Carol Doyle,
Aye.
Tony Esco,
Aye.
Peter McFarland,
Aye.
Joe Sheehan,
Aye.
and I also vote aye. Question for Pat and Joe. What else do we need to do to complete our actions here to set up for a vote on the article on the administrative budget or on any of our other articles?
So, I don't think we need the administrative budget. I think we could take a motion internally. That isn't something that I don't think town meeting has to. Well, SCP has his hands up. I don't know.
Well, I was just looking over the agenda, the warrant for the annual town meeting. We're not on it. It's only 3 articles, and we're not one of the articles. That's what I got in the mail. It's just 3 articles. We'll run the proposed one earlier, but what I got in the mail, it's basically Article 1, 2, and 3, and 3 is
Was that the special?
MWRA, and 2 is
That's a special.
Yeah, there's another warrant.
oh, there's another one. Oh, all right. Oh, Jesus, we have a special too. Oh God.
Article
Okay.
7 and 8.
Oh, all
Yeah,
right.
it's
All
already-
right. Sorry, I take it back.
Okay.
Yeah, I said anything.
So Joe Greeley, or Patty, it sounds like you knew that there were 2 articles that are ours. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
our 2 standard articles. And I think we're everything that we typically do, other than the project articles. So basically, putting money into the use accounts for the next fiscal year, and then setting our administrative budget for FY21.
Joe Greeley?
Just a quick point of, I guess, a request. Again, I can coordinate this with John, but maybe Pat, if you, on that, the allocation of the admin budget, if you can help me update this FY20 numbers. We can kind of roll that forward for another month and present to town meeting what maybe mid-June looks like for FY20. I know we've spent 280,000-ish for the St. Lots, so that's a significant number that we should update.
Okay, yeah,
The St. Lot
I'll have to check.
is coming out of the
I wasn't
account,
sure if
out of the project account, but I know we've spent other CPA admin money.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Let me ask a related question. Who from this committee is expecting to be at town meeting? Peter is, Joe Sheehan, Cheryl Doyle,
Tony,
Tom Frisco. Joe, are you, Joe Greeley, are you saying you are? Right now, if I had to decide right now, I will not be because of health concerns. I know they've done an awful lot to try to protect people from COVID-19, but I had lung cancer surgery a month ago, and I'm already up in the high-risk age group. And every time I talk to people like David Hearn or Mary Lou Foley, they have plans to give out masks, but they don't feel they have any way to enforce it if someone decides that they just don't care to wear a mask or social distance. For me, the risk is higher than right now my health advisor, who shares a house with me, is willing to accept. But if we've got Peter, our vice chair and our incoming chair, and we have Cheryl, we have Joe, both Joes, it sounds like we have a good enough presence. And John, you're going to be there too? Okay. So
I am too.
good. So it sounds like we'll have a good turnout. I did want to make you folks aware of my situation. I won't belabor it beyond that.
God bless.
Thank you, Tony. Are we all set then for for both articles? I think you started to say something about that, Pat, and then we skewed off in a different direction.
No, I think we're good on both articles.
Okay, Tony, and then John.
I just have a couple questions on the financial part, just for my own education. On unspent administrative funds for 2020, do they just stay in the administrative account?
Nope,
Or do they go into unrestricted?
and
they get rolled back in.
Into where?
It's unrestricted. We don't
Unrestricted.
lose the money, but if we don't spend it, it just we goes back to unrestricted.
And then I have one question on the I guess it's from the town, the page with all the financial, the treasurer page. Where it lists all the surcharges for residential, commercial, and industrial, the surcharge account, which is
Okay.
so the surcharge, for example, for residential is 377,000 there, 377. All right, and that's 1% of the figure to the left, right? It's 1% of, right. All right,
Yep.
is the industrial rate different? Because when you go down to the industrial number, 95,866, that one's not 1%. Is the industrial different?
No, and
Do you
Joe
see what I'm doing?
or John was
You see what I mean about the math?
Yes.
Thank you.
John, Joe, could that be an error? Peter?
well, residential rate has an exclusion for the first 100,000. Investment. And I don't think the commercial does. So those numbers will never actually, I think line up the way we think they should.
Would argue for the residential being lower than 1% on the overall base, and it's right at 1%. And the
Well,
Yeah, but I think you're talking about this, I think the CPA value.
that should already be adjusted for the exclusion.
Right.
So that's just a question I had, just so I can understand these sheets better.
okay. John Aprea?
We can get clarification on that as well. I don't know, Joe, if you have an understanding, but it's new to me. It's a good catch there.
Okay,
As a
so
math major.
we'll John and Joe have to sort this out to their mutual satisfaction.
Thank you.
Yeah, maybe so next week, Joe, Pat and I can get together early next week, and if we need to review this and get some questions to Tom and the folks over there, we can.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Tony, do you have anything else?
That was it. Thank you.
Okay, and John, you had held your hand up. Did you have something?
I know I was just mention that maybe next week, Joe and Pat and I can get together
Okay, so the point you've made.
to review an updated version of this, and we can add that to the list. Not a problem.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands. I think we need a motion to approve the administrative cost proposal. Am I right, Pat?
Approve as presented.
Sorry, what was that?
Motion to approve as reviewed.
We need a motion to approve what will become the motion to town meeting regarding administrative cost budget. And I think John just made the motion.
Well, the only thing is we should be making a motion to do the 10% and the administrative. Because technically we can put more than 10% in. The minimum we can do is 10% to put in the other three accounts. So we should be making a motion to, my motion would be to add 10% to the three accounts and 5% for administrative. And then we can, the gang can get together and work out what the final number that will present the town meeting. But I think that's how I would make the motion to do 10% for historical preservation, 10% for community housing, and 10% for open space and recreation, and 5% for the administrative budget. And numbers to be finalized and presented to town meeting.
Agreed. So if the 5% figure sets aside more money than Pat and Joe's budget allocates, that's fine. You just plug the extra into the other line, right? But if it's less, if the 5% is less than that, then we need to have some adjustments made down. I guess could be in the other as well. I meant that to sound like a question. Is that how you guys would go about finalizing the two motions? Joe Greeley. Joe Greeley.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with Peter that if we, with the board's acceptance, if we identified the allocation as 10%, 10, 10, and 5, the board is aware of Tony's excellent observation, and it does look like it's over. It does look like the reserve is overstated by about $3,000. So it's going to be a negligible, allocation, but it's still something that we probably will need to adjust based on Mark Good's input. But if we take a vote based on Peter's recommendation, I don't know whose motion, but if we follow Peter's logic, then we can arrive at a final number and then make the entry and present our warrant motions on town meeting floor accordingly.
Okay, well, we haven't had a second for any of the motions yet, so we have
I'll
flexibility.
second Peter's motion.
Okay. Cheryl, you had a comment?
Yeah, just a quick comment. After they update everything, can they send the figures to Pat so Pat can just send it to us so we have it prior to town meeting? Whatever numbers they come up with, the adjusted correct numbers?
Pat, that's okay,
Yeah,
right?
that should be, yeah,
Sorry,
that,
Pat.
yeah, that should be expected, yeah.
Excellent idea. I'm sorry, was that John speaking?
Yeah, it should be expected. We would want to send that out to the board prior to town meeting. Again, I apologize for being a little bit behind on this sort of stuff.
No problem.
Okay, so that's the plan. The core team will finalize and check on things that need to be checked on and send the final result around to the board in advance of the meeting. And now we have a motion with a second to do just that. And if there's any other discussion on the motion. Seeing none, go around for a vote. John Aprea,
John Aprea, aye.
Penny Starr,
Patty Starr, aye.
Joe Greeley,
Joe Greeley, aye.
Cheryl Doyle,
Cheryl Doyle, aye.
Tony Esco,
Aye.
Peter McFarland,
Peter McFarland, aye.
Joe Sheehan,
Aye.
and I am an aye, so that's another unanimous vote. If I'm keeping track of things, we got into the pre-application process discussion. And although that probably should end along with the table schedule. So with your permission, we'll jump to item 6.
John, I don't think we discussed the pre-application process. We got into it, but we have the forms that you and I wrote.
I didn't mean to say anything different than that, Pat. I said the discussion of it seems like it should travel with the schedule to the end of the agenda. And so I was proposing to move the other committee business part up ahead of those two.
All right.
Fine.
Okay.
So,
Well, I can just provide a just brief status update on so for Bond Street Playground, I think Travis said he just got permission or just got the okay from the company in New York that is doing the poured rubber. They couldn't travel out of state for a number of months due to the coronavirus. So I think he just told me as of early this week, basically, I think they are ready to move out of state and they can come and deliver the poured rubber. For the Lower Balch project, I had just a brief invoice. So I think Travis has the equipment purchased for the education area of the playground of the park. And so that's one recent invoice for that project. I know he's still working. The big thing is the ADA ramp going from the Balch School down to Elliott Park. That's a kind of major, major expense, and it's still ongoing. I think he hopes to get most of this done hopefully throughout the summer. But obviously, if we had him in, he could probably give you a little bit more detail of where they are schedule-wise. But I think everything is going as well as it can, given the circumstance for that project. The Pavilion Project, I talked to Ramonda Morgan from the Conservation Commission earlier this week to see where they are. And I know they had a conversation with DPW, I believe. And Cheryl, you can feel free to jump in if you have any more information on this. But I know they had to work at DPW for the pad itself and getting the site preps. And I think they are on Kathy Carney's radar for putting the portion of the project for the pavilion itself out to bid. For the Carillon project, I'm kind of.
Let me give Cheryl a chance to.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see her.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Ramonda, Mark Ryan, and Matt Walsh and we had met out on the property, and we marked where we needed the pavilion. And for the poured concrete, the only thing that would change it is if we hit ledge or something. But Mark Ryan already knows where we want the boulders backed up to. He knows we need a handicap path to get to the pavilion, and he knows we need a ramp on either side of it, so it kind of blends in. So if somebody has a wheelchair, they can come in from the parking lot side. Let's say they want to go out on the field or something, it'll allow them to exit on to the other side. And Kathy Carney does have all our stuff. She's been updated on everything completely, and ours will go out to bid, and it only goes out for 30 days, and there shouldn't be any issues moving forward once it goes out. And DPW is going to do our site work for us. So we're back on track.
All right.
Here. Pat, back to the Carillon.
So this project, I know Joe really as the kind of the liaison to this project. I included him in an email earlier this week. I touched base with Lee and Bernie to kind of Lee Leach and Bernie Cooper, who were the applicants for the project, to see where this is at. We need to get going with it. So not much has occurred. So I reached out to Kathy Carney, and I'll have a sit down with her. I think we had scheduled time with her tomorrow, but we'll have a sit down and just see what steps we can start to do to get the project going once we get into the next fiscal year. Obviously, it's very busy right now with a few major projects going out to bid and the closing of the fiscal year itself. So we'll hopefully get going and reconvene on the Carillon project once we're into FY21. We get some breathing room from all the COVID related procurements as well.
Pat, do you know at this point whether they're going to need to apply for more money because of inflation related changes through these delays?
Yeah, it's I couldn't answer that. Yeah, I mean, I can imagine there might be some issues, especially, and I mean, Bernie could tell you this. I mean, there's not many people that can work on a Carillon to begin with. It's one thing to get engineering work local, but specialized work such as that, it's going to have to travel. Sometimes even internationally. I know that England has they seem to have the market on Carillonners or people that work on the instrument. So I really don't know. This is, I guess, something we're going to have to figure out and sit down and see what can be done. It was $215,000 that was appropriated for the project. So I guess it remains to be seen if that is going to be enough or it may have to be phased.
Okay, well, please keep us posted on that, even if all you're hearing are rumors and possibilities.
Yeah, I mean, like anyone else, with everything going on, stuff is, the price of things, could increase. I mean, extra precautions that need to be taken, and then travel itself is limited. So it impacts everything, and certainly I would imagine it impacts procurement for a project like this or any project really.
And how about the chapel? Are we all done with the chapel?
I have not heard anything from that project. I haven't reached out to them. I mean, last we heard, I know there was the ventilation system. We paid for the quote for looking into the ventilation system. I'm not sure whether that's been installed yet, or if that is something that they are planning to install, or what the status is on that. I don't think PBCC has had any remote meetings. I could be wrong on that, but I haven't heard of them meeting anytime soon.
Okay.
And
I
that's-
think Joe had his,
Joe Greeley?
Yeah, just thank you. Just on those two projects, the PBCC has, as Pat said, the PBCC has not met. They did make some alterations back in the early spring in line with the original contract. Those alterations seem to have bought us some time. Obviously, the fact that the chapel itself has not been open to the public or used in any way in the last 4 months, maybe. The issue at hand is relative to the ventilation and the heating of the building. So at this point, it's kind of a non-issue until the fall. I do believe that whatever steps they took were adequate to buy us that time. What I don't know is if they were satisfactory, such that the rest of the project, as we heard 6 months ago, the rest of the project even needs to be done at this point. So they basically bought 6 to 9 months. I don't think it's over, but the PBCC has not met. If I could, Mr. Chair, just getting back to the Carillon for 1 second. I did talk to Lee today. He has touched base with because this is such a specialized task. He has touched base with two likely bidders, if not again such specialized work that they may be the only bidders. They're ready, willing, and able to jump in. Although some of the work needs to be done in overseas, the bulk of the work, there's 2 steps. One is a design, which probably will take less than a week, and that vendor is available and ready. The second, more extensive work, the work will be done in Virginia, so that Virginia in the US. So there's so far so good. There's not a lot of concern about international work needing to be done. I think Pat, it's great that Pat's going to talk to Kathy, but I do think that we'll need to maybe circle back between Kathy and Tony, maybe, and just ask that Kathy get some more support to focus on this.
Okay, if you're envisioning a formal communication at some point in the near future, please let me or my successor know what you need and when you need it.
It would seem that question will be answered based on what Pat and Kathy's discussion goes like tomorrow.
Fair enough. Pat, since it's your discussion, do you want to add anything at this point, or wait and see how that goes?
No, yeah. Wait and see how it goes. I mean, these are all things, we want to see completed, all these projects, and we're trying to work on them as well as we can. Obviously, things took a turn. We got right into the spring, right into the season when you start to put projects out to bid, and you can't control a pandemic, and so all hands on deck have been focused on other measures. So it's unfortunate because we had Munis kind of delay us last year, and then we have a pandemic delay us in the spring. So I'm really hoping that FY21 is a little better, and we can try to get some of these projects going once we can free up some time. Obviously, anything related to to the response to COVID-19, it takes top priority right now for all municipal departments. So, we can hopefully see if, July is a better month and we can get back into the swing of things.
Okay. So if that covers that item, then I think we are at the point of talking about the pre-application process. Let me make a point or two, picking up from where our discussion was off. Cheryl is right to say that if we have too many requirements, we may scare people off. At the same time, our requirements say you've got to come in with formal approval of your proposal from the people who are going to have to say yes for you to be able to go forward. Sometimes it's Public Works, sometimes it's somebody else. I think there was a recognition that we perhaps were working off too short a list of how people were supposed to provide that, and that some of them were coming in without really having a formal approval and waving their hands. So it's certainly possible that the forms that Pat and I were working on are an overcorrection, but I think we are balancing a couple of different objectives here. One is to make this an attractive process that will bring good projects in, and the other is to make this an effective review process so that problems that exist within the proposals get addressed and worked through before we're under the gun to say yes or no. Now, the question is, how do we accomplish both of those objectives if this is too complicated a process? What other ideas are out there? Peter.
Well, go back to earlier discussion. We can break it into two processes. We have a pre-application process and a final application. I think my feeling is get together with Pat or, if anybody else wants to join us to discuss how we break it up and have it so it isn't about sign-offs as much as it's about making sure that, everybody, the two processes we want to kind of keep our hand on it as we go through the process and have that pre-application and then go to the final, like Canton's process. So I think we could study a little bit more. I think we should probably put this to talk in July and, work on it a little bit more, kind of get through the process too, because I wasn't expecting all this sign-off stuff. And this is kind of taking me by surprise. So I'd rather look at it a little bit longer and try to see how other towns are handling it. And we can work it from there.
Errol, then Tony, then Joe Sheehan.
I agree with Peter. This is a lot to digest, and it feels like it came from left field. I think, to be honest, the first year we did this, we were able to get the requirements of the sign-offs and everything, even though we were new at it. And then the second year somehow turned into a kerfuffle somehow, and the proper letters weren't submitted. So maybe we adjust our packet that the applicants have and have it. Did you go to whatever, like a little reminder or highlighted or in bold? But I agree with Peter. I think we should investigate it more because now it just looks like there are just too many hens in that hen house.
Okay, Tony?
I do agree with Cheryl's comments. I just want to add that my own personal experience with our chairperson's application for the Morse House was a a totally unexpectedly complex procedure where I never expected that I would have to go to the Board of Selectmen 3 times. It took 3 visits, 4 to 6 weeks to get an answer for them on having a feasibility study on a house that they already own. It was the town of Norwood. So sometimes things that you think are very simple end up being much more complex. And if we had known that we should start August 1st, if we had had pre-application time, that's perhaps when we should have vetted out that situation. But we didn't know it was going to be a situation until later. So if we had started earlier, then our application process would have gone more smoothly. So if I were to vote on a procedure based on the experience we had this past year, I would take John Hall's pre-application, the 2-step process, only because of what happened to the Historical Commission with what we thought was a simple request to ask for a feasibility study, and it turned into this big complex situation, which added a lot of time to the timeline because we kept having to go back to the Board of Selectmen. So on those forms where you ask for dates, if, for example, Patrick, you say you have to go to the Board of Selectmen or you have to go to Kathy, then you need to give those people a date by which certain you give me an answer and not just procrastinate me. I felt personally procrastinated a bit by the Board of Selectmen. I didn't think this was a complex vote. But, to your point, Cheryl, I don't want a project to be killed by procrastination either. And it was almost looking like that. Fortunately, I have a lot of patience.
Oh, good.
Ian and then Pat DeShane.
When you were talking about sign-offs, I'm just not totally clear on this. I think I have an idea, but are you talking about sign-offs from this group, or are you talking about the selectmen? Are you talking about the town manager and or Kathy Connie? I'm thinking that certainly the input for Kathy Connie, because she's got experience in the financial, and that input is important. Is that what you mean by? Would she have to sign off on something? Would Tony have to sign off on something, or the Board of Selectmen?
Well,
at that point,
if I could just clarify on that point, we're using the term sign off to mean this person acknowledges that they had an opportunity to comment, and that's it. It's not a sign off that says, yeah, we support this project if it goes forward. Leaves a lot of questions open. Pat, you were up next.
No, I was.
One more comment on that. I agree with Cheryl when she said you certainly don't want to end up with a pocket veto. I can certainly understand that and support that. And at the same time, I also believe that all the information, the expertise is important for us to get, especially for an applicant coming in if they don't have everything perfect when they walk in the door. So thank you.
Pat?
So I think Cheryl might have mentioned this. I don't know if I interpret it in a different way, but if we maybe add something to our existing application, basically the reason why me and John did this is because these projects, when an applicant brings it to us and they submit it and it's November 30th, they should have met with any entity within the town, whether it's a department, board, or committee that manages the parcel of land with which their project is going to take part of, or if it's an historical preservation project and it's a item, then they should have talked to whatever entity is in charge for managing that item or where that item is situated. So we don't want a situation where someone gives us an application and we're starting to review it and they haven't even talked to anyone that has to manage or maintain that property. That group may not support the project right out the get-go, but they have to be aware of the concept and aware that it's being discussed, I think, before the CPC, you all take a look at a project. I think whether it's a project on conservation land, a project that involves, the Morse House, which is managed by the Board of Selectmen. We need to make sure that when we get that application in November, that they have had forewarning that something like this is being proposed and is being discussed and debated by a committee. So that's I guess the reason why we put forward a process like this.
Thanks, Pat. Carol?
I just want to follow up. I get what Patrick is saying. I also think that it falls on our board that we need to educate the public that even though it's on the website and the steps are there on the application, I think education is huge because, like, for an example, like Concom, we won't hear any application unless the application is complete. And it's stated under the conservation process, you have to have a complete application because it becomes a matter of record. So I don't know if maybe on the website, we need to put some of the print on bold. We need to educate more, like during these meetings, or put something else out. But since we're so new, like we need to educate the public. But I don't think anything should come to us and it's not a complete application, because then there are too many open questions. Then there are red flags, and you never want any of that, because you do need the blessing of whichever board. Like if you're doing something on conservation land, you need their blessing. If you're doing something that's historical or housing, you need the blessing of that board, and then you have to make sure that it fits into the criteria of the CPC state guidelines. So I don't know, maybe we can do a couple education nights or something, but I do believe if you make it too complicated, you're going to scare people away that don't understand some of the stuff, and they might have great ideas. Even if they were to come to us and say, hey, I have this absolutely great idea. What do you think about it? And then we can say, you need to go step A, B, C, and then it goes 1, 2, 3.
Patty, start.
I looked at the pre-application process as exactly what Cheryl just said, that if people come to us, as the example that Tony gave, they don't really know what they're supposed to do. They come to us with a pre-application, and then we can advise them as to, you need to go see the conservation committee, or you need to go see so-and-so. I think it's an advantageous new step that gives us the opportunity to educate each individual project before the final application comes in. That's how I interpreted it. And then I have a follow-up question. I'm assuming that any project that comes forward, we would be able to hear about. I would never want to think that anybody would be pushed aside without our knowledge. That would be way beyond anybody else's purview. That's the purview of this board. Just my comment.
Thank you, Patty. I have a thought that actually picks up on something Patty just said, but also I hope connects to what everybody else has been saying. I think the most valuable element that Pat came up with in his original design for this process was the pre-application meeting between the proposers and Pat himself. And if you keep that meeting, the purpose of the meeting is to allow somebody knowledgeable of our process to take a look at the proposal in its broad brush and say, here's a list of the people and groups that you need to talk to. And here's a list of the things that we think you should be looking to them to comment on. This group over here can give you help in estimating costs in a way that's compatible with our governing purchasing rules. This one over here can give you comment on whether they're willing to agree for the long-term maintenance, whatever it might be. And so the form would just be something that would be the output of the meeting. And there would nobody be signing anything. It's just there's a list of with boxes of people who might be in the loop, and there'd be a line next to each of the names or group names that says that Pat would fill out after this conversation, saying, go to this person for this, go to that person for that. These other people you don't really need to talk to. The light department has nothing to say on this project. That, I think, would maximize the educational value, and at a time which is perfect for the process of developing a successful proposal, but without having an elaborate formal sign process, and without creating in so doing the opportunity for any people acting in bad faith to shortchange the reviewers or to pocket veto proposals or any of the other things that might go awry. You're just saying, these are people you ought to talk to. You don't have to prove to us that you did. You don't have to prove to us that you acted on what they told you. But these are the sort of things that the committee is going to be looking for when the proposal comes in. And they're going to want you to tell what you got from these different people and how it's, you know, as support for your proposal. How does that sound?
That makes sense.
Ian?
Your mic, Joe. Joe, your mic's off.
There you go.
That's a great idea. I think that's pretty much what Pat does during the day when people come up with different things that, you know, planning board type issues, and they will stop in, and it's just very natural that they do that. And I think that this would fit in the same way, and I think it would be great.
Okay. Other comments, Peter?
I'm still not ready to formalize this process right now. So I'd rather just put this on for July, and I'll talk. I can meet with Pat, and we can kind of iron out what. Because I still think we need break out have the pre-application process, right, and an paperwork for it. Then all this other sign-off stuff is incorporated into it, not just kind of, we're kind of just throwing something and adding a piece in there. And I don't think it's necessary. I think we can be pragmatic and put a pre-application together and incorporates everything that's everybody's been talking about as far as that goes. So I'm making a motion if we just put it on the agenda for July and vote on it then.
Don't need a motion. You're in charge of the agenda for July, so you can put.
Oh, I know, but I'm not. I'm just trying to be polite.
A very good discussion, a lot of good points made and issues raised, and it becomes input to that conversation between you and Pat to come up with process version 2, if you will. And I'm very comfortable with what Peter is suggesting, especially if Pat is. And there he is with
He's running away already.
Sorry about that. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
Okay. Anybody have any other thoughts related to this and such? I know one of the things on the schedule that isn't about this approval process was about bringing back anticipated project applicants from the incomplete year just passed. And I don't know whether we've had any thoughts yet about when to do this or how to do this. Let me ask if Peter and Pat can look at that as well for July.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
I think Tony had her hand up first.
Well, Tony?
Thank you. You didn't say my hand just a minute ago. I just wanted to add that when you're talking about the application process, that in the pre-application timeline, the date of August 1st is mentioned. And you have to consider that, suppose someone needs permission from a board of selectmen. Well, people go on vacation too, so the whole board might not be available right away. Kathy Carney could be on vacation. So, you do need time. You can't assume that people can see you the day you call. So I just still think you need, the month that I think it's nice to have that period in August and September as a pre-application process. My other question about the timeline for the incomplete year of the projects is we did not have our public hearing. That was canceled in March. So I assume you mean that as well.
I do.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Joe? Really?
Yeah, just a couple of points. One, just to kind of piggyback on what Tony just said, all of these things are going to take time, and it's time up front. So we need to make sure that the community understands that they can't just come out on November 15th in the middle of our window period and say, I want X. I mean, there's a lot of, we don't want to put small hoops in their way, but frankly, we're 9 months into the current small group of projects, and we're not running smoothly by any stretch. So this past year should certainly be a learning experience for us. I think we need to set clear expectations for not only us, but also for the community. I would also, as part of that, I want to make sure that somewhere along the way, we have a good understanding with Town Hall as far as the Town Hall support process. Pat did a good job. I think in the last paragraph of page 2 here on this memo that Pat and John collaborated on, whoever wrote it said that there might be a need to send a memo to all departments on the second page. I think that's a good idea, but frankly, we've learned. Yes, hopefully this type of year will never occur again, but we need to have some expectation that this is an important process. CPA is not going to go away, and it just has to be built into everyone's timetable, all the departments' timetable for the year. We're 9 months into this, and frankly, there are some projects that haven't even started yet, like the Carillon. And we can't, whatever happened, and that's history, but we just can't let that happen again, if at all possible. So that's it. Thank you.
I would, Cheryl, I'll get to you in a second. We have dangers on all sides. We don't want to be put in a position where people come in with an idea and are expecting us to write the proposal for them, do all the deciding and heavy lifting. We can help, but we can't take over. We also have to be cognizant of the fact that no matter how much more carefully and forcefully we make our points, there will be people who only hear what they want to hear, who will come in and do it wrong, and there won't be anything we can say in advance that will stop them doing that, or we can keep them doing that if we bail them out each time. And the last point is, there have been times in our first few years where project proposals came in that some of our members were so excited about that they didn't want to look too closely or talk for great length about the details. They just wanted to say, I love this project. Whatever they want to do, I'm sure it's fine. Let's go. We've got to discipline ourselves, even for the projects we love the most, not to fall into that trap either. And that's a lot on our plate, but the life we have chosen. Anyone else have some final thoughts? Cheryl?
Oh, I just want to say, I think either Peter or Patrick or both of them together should ask Kathy what she feels comfortable as the contingency, the percentage of it, so we won't have an issue there. And then on on the purchasing department's defense. Unfortunately, this COVID-19 threw a wrench into everything and it took the priority, and it was really, really bad timing. And there's a lot of things going on that we're not aware of, but once we get out of this, hopefully very soon, we can get back onto a smooth track and get things moving, because then there's not a new program going on. There's not the COVID. There's none of this. Hopefully all that gets washed away and we can get much smoother at what we're doing. That's all.
I would tweak your first point just a little. I think not everything that Kathy Carney is telling people fits into the concept of a contingency. Some of it is whole categories of cost that they simply have not thought to include. Sometimes their notion of what the cost tends to be when you have to run it through our legal state government, local government process is not contingency size, it's order, it's multiples. And so I think it's great to suggest to Kathy that one way of simplifying her feedback is if this looks like something that can be addressed adequately with a contingency, fine. If it needs something else, maybe say that equally briefly. We're not looking for her to redo the whole budget. Just provide guidance that's fairly brief and easy to implement. Is that consistent with what you're saying, Cheryl?
Can I just follow up? I just thought for the percentage, just to cover the unknown, maybe we could ask her, I know you have to do prevailing wages because we're a municipality. So maybe there's a checklist that even our board could come up with to make people aware of that, because it's a municipality, it does fall under prevailing wages, which is totally different than when I'm doing bidding for contracts, because I'm not doing government. I'm doing commercial, but not government ones. So I don't have to worry about prevailing wages. So maybe just like a little cheat sheet for people to be aware of, this is how a municipality functions and this is what you need to be aware of in order for it to go out to bid. Does that make sense then? No?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's all
Yes.
good. Last chance. Okay, seeing no hands anymore, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second? Only seconds? And I think this is one that we could just wave our hand and say, yeah. Thanks, everybody. Good meeting.
Thank you very much.